Good evening. This city council meeting will begin in 30 seconds.
It didn't work out here, so are you ready to roll?
This regular City Council meeting of the City of Oak Park is called to order. Please stand for the pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of
City Clerk Ed Norris, please call the roll.
Mayor McClellan.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Radner. Councilmember Burns.
Here.
Councilmember Rich. Here. Councilmember Weiss.
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum. Next, we need a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second?
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Agenda is approved. I would like to remove, yes.
Can we send somebody to the back door to let Mr. Radner in the building?
Yeah, yes, absolutely.
And for the record, my phone was buzzing while we were doing the Pledge of Allegiance, so he would have been here on time had the door been open.
Okay. Please remove item I from the consent agenda to be first for a question. The rest of the consent agenda items are presented for approval without discussion as a single item. 5A, regular council meeting minutes of January 7th, 2019. B, Planning Commission meeting minutes of October 8th and November 12th. C, Arts and Cultural Diversity Commission meeting minutes of September 13th, October 11th, and November 11th. D, Library Board meeting minutes of November 20th. E, Parks and Recreation Commission meeting minutes of November 14th. F, request to accept the Planning Commission's recommendation to approve a special land use for TCF Auto Body and Wholesale of 13210 Cloverdale. G, request to cancel the January 29th Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. H, payment request from OHM Advisors for engineering consulting services. Skipping I, going to J, request authorization to bid the 2018-19 water main replacement project M675. K, request to approve payment application number 3, final, for the 2017-18 miscellaneous concrete repair project M672, and licenses, new and renewals, submitted for January 22nd. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there support?
Support.
Thank you. A roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Burns.
Yes.
Mayor McClellan.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Radner.
Yes.
Councilmember Rich.
Yes.
Councilmember Weiss.
Yes.
Okay, consent agenda is approved. Take a look at item I, request to authorize the bid for the 2019 landscape maintenance contract M697. If Assistant City Manager Kevin Yee would just come and answer a question about how does that jive with item 15A, extending the contract of the current vendor.
Good evening.
Good evening.
They are, so the lawn maintenance is more cutting of parks and lawn areas, and landscape maintenance is more fine landscaping where we trim and maintain hedges, flowers, things like that, our landscaping beds, both around the city complex and at the 9 and Coolidge intersection. Historically, we had combined them in the past, and what we learned is those that cut a lot of lawn are not necessarily good at the fine landscaping, and so we separated the contracts, and we've had better luck with how the appearance of the fine landscaping.
Very good. Thank you so much. So item I, request to approve authorization to bid out this landscaping maintenance contract. I need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second?
And seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. We don't have elected officials here today. Public hearings or communication, that puts us down to ordinances. Item 13, we have a first reading of an ordinance to amend Article 19, Special Land Uses of the City of Oak Park Code of Ordinances. This brings the language up to what was agreed upon. It removes City Council from the site plan oversight because 2 members of City Council are on the Planning Commission, and we felt it might be doubling up unnecessarily. Is there someone to discuss this?
Yeah, so if council remembers, back in November 20th of 2017 and December 4th of 2017, we did our first and second reading to remove city council from approving site plans. As part of that, it was part of our RRC program in order to get that certification, and through our oversight, we did not address the special land use section when we were doing all of the amendments. That was our intention when we came to you back in November and December. And the only thing that will really be coming to City Council will be zoning changes, ordinance amendments, and things like that. Any site plan requirements would just be within the Planning Commission. Special land uses, the difference between those and a regular site plan is that they are instances for types of uses that we require additional site plan requirements on, a little more stringent. And then it also requires a public hearing at the Planning Commission level. So those are still conducted, and we still hold them to that higher standard. It's just you still giving us the trust at the Planning Commission level that we are making sure the site plan specifications are met.
Could we look at near the end amendments for section 1930? Can you see if you can find that one in 13A?
Okay. Is there a question in relation to that section that I can answer?
There was 13A. There were changes striking the City Council and putting in the Planning Commission, correct?
Correct. Now, that is just for the special land use portion of alcoholic liquors. It still comes to City Council to decide whether or not the actual liquor license is given to that business. So those will always come to City Council with its own public hearing.
Do you want to speak to that?
If you'd like me to. So, Director Maroney, one of the things we talked about in the Planning Commission, and I unfortunately had to leave the room when we began this discussion. We had a disturbance that I want to thank Public Safety for handling for us. Especially because I was intimately involved in this special land use approval process with liquor licenses back when, in 2013, when City Council implemented a tavern license ordinance. Prior to the vote that took place thereafter, they felt, and this was part of the discussion in the Planning Commission meeting, that creating a special land use approval process for restaurants serving liquor was just another step and another layer of control that they could have to make sure that the city's interests were being best served. So I think, if I'm not misspeaking, I think what the concern that some of them on council may have is by now changing it so that the Planning Commission has authority over that special land use approval process, you are now taking that portion of their control away from City Council and giving it to the Planning Commission. And they all know that the liquor license approval process itself, in summation, still requires their discretion and authority and approval. But I think there's some concern that taking the land use, the zoning part of it out of their control would put us into an unsafe situation. So could you comment on that?
Yeah, I would disagree in respect to that. It is actually just being redundant in doing the special land use process, both at the Planning Commission level and then bringing it to City Council. We are making sure they're meeting all of the requirements in regards to the special land use. And since they are coming again to City Council to do a public hearing for approval of the license, you're actually duplicating the thing at 2 levels, which to me is redundant and unnecessary. We've spoken with our city attorney in regards to that, and I don't know if you want to speak up, Ebony, but she agrees.
So Kim, let me ask you this. One of the things that I believe, and again, remember, I had to leave the room, unfortunately, during the Planning Commission meeting last week. One of the things that I believe was said by our city planner was that regardless of whether or not City Council was changed out for Planning Commission in Section 1930, Section A, 1, that they were told that they could still implement zoning requirements or other things that may be relative, obviously, if they so choose to during the liquor approval process. Is that correct?
Okay, Ebony, correct me if I'm wrong. Technically, the way I understand it is regardless of if City Council wanted to hold them accountable in the site plan process for things that are not identified in our special land use process, you're not allowed to do that. We can only hold them accountable for what we have written into our documents. However, during the approval of the liquor license itself, which comes to City Council, that is when you are provided the opportunity to ask for additional requirements in order to approve the license. Correct?
So that is
You're
accurate.
Absolutely
Okay.
correct. Yep, that is accurate. And just to add again, we have looked at this, and I just want to reiterate what Director Maroney started off saying. Excuse me. Council, when you adopted the prior ordinance amendment in December 4, 17, that was the intent, and that was the purpose of that, to get it ready for the redevelopment ready program at the time. And it was just an oversight that this portion had not also abrogated your authority and given that to the Planning Commission, but that was your intent in your November 2017 ordinance. This cleans it up. And then again, it is just a redundancy because now, specifically with regard to liquor license or the tavern license, they do have to go before the Planning Commission, that public hearing process, and they will still have to come to council, and you're approving their contract and the issuance of the license as well, or the permit.
So are you comfortable with that?
I guess I am comfortable with that.
Okay. Any comments from council? Yes.
Madam Mayor, I don't think we have a proposal.
We have
yet.
a mention. We need a motion.
I'll raise the motion to approve.
This is a motion for the first reading of an ordinance to amend Article 19, Special Land Uses of the City of Oak Park Code of Ordinances.
So moved?
Moved.
Moved and supported. All right. Yes, Councilmember Weiss.
I just wanted to clarify, if there still needed to be an approval of like a zoning exemption, for example, would that come before council, or would that still be handled at the planning commission level?
I'm assuming you're speaking of a variance?
Yes.
Yes, that would actually go to the Zoning Board of Appeals for approval. It
And
does
that-
not go to council for a
Okay.
variance.
All right. And that's currently the way it is, or that's? what
That's
would-
currently the way it
okay.
is.
All right, thank you.
Any further questions or comments? Okay, roll call vote then.
Mayor McClellan.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Radner.
Yes.
Councilmember Rich.
Yes.
Councilmember Weiss.
Yes.
Councilmember Burr.
Yes.
Motion carried. Item 13B is first reading of an ordinance to amend Article 17, General Provisions, Section 1712 of the City of Oak Park Code of Ordinances. This is about building new houses on streets that have certain elevations
Point of
and having
order.
the new houses.
Madam Mayor, I
match.
think we need a motion before we have discussion.
Ah,
I'll read the motion.
okay, got it.
Second?
And we got, there we go. A standard for elevation of floors, that new construction has to equal the existing elevations so that the block doesn't look funny. Is that,
For the most part, not exactly equal to it, but if there's a variance between houses on each side, it would be the middle ground of that. We want to avoid that any new homes that are being constructed nowadays are sticking way far out of the ground. Our building inspector asked us to put this ordinance in place, so it's easier for him as these new homes are being built.
Madam Mayor, I have some questions.
yes, Councilmember Rich.
So I understand subsection A deals with, you want to have the sloping grade in the house run towards the center of the house to a drain. That makes sense. And the second part of subsection B is that natural runoff would not, from the outside property, would not go onto adjacent properties.
Correct.
That's easy to understand. Where has the problem developed for section B? Because I see new construction in the city, and I'm excited when I see these new houses. And quite frankly, if somebody wants to buy the house to the east of me or to the west of my house and tear it down and build a very large house that sticks up higher than my house, that raises my property value, so I'm excited about it. I don't understand why
not
all
the
of a
roof.
sudden we have to have a new ordinance that restricts how, because usually people want to have a big basement, that's why they have their house up a little bit higher. I don't get it. I don't know why, I don't know what the problem is that's being addressed, and I don't understand if there is a problem that needs to be addressed.
Well, in order to retain property values in any neighborhood, you don't want any one building to stand out like a sore thumb. And some of the proposed residences would be sticking out 5-6 feet of the ground so they can avoid costs of digging a deeper basement, because you can always go down. It doesn't look as nice as the other houses, and we also get complaints from the other residences. It also prevents them from going as high up into a second story because we have, I think, a maximum of 27 feet tall for any residence. So
I still don't, I haven't seen this as a problem.
I don't see it as a huge problem because we only have so many vacant lots. However, it's something that was requested through our building department, so it was easier for them to address, and we felt it was the right thing to do.
Does Councilmember Rich want pictures from the,
No, I just want to have an understanding as to why somebody would recommend it. Right now, I don't see a problem. I'm not going to vote for it because I don't see it as a problem. I see this as a further restriction on private property rights. We already have restrictions in place, height restrictions, setback restrictions. I
Yeah.
don't see how this is an issue, and I'm not getting an adequate explanation as to why it's an issue. That's all.
Yeah, as we're getting these vacant lots in our community now being built upon, we've seen a few residents on each side complaining about new homes going in that are exceeding a normal level and not fitting in with the rest of the neighborhood, which does detract in your property values. And it's actually a normal ordinance that you see in many communities. So it's just one we have not adopted here because we were almost entirely built out.
What's the definition of, quote, "average finished first floor elevation from the immediate adjacent homes or buildings," end quote?
Well,
That's in this proposed ordinance.
so if one on the right side is at 1 foot and the other one's at 3 foot, the average would be 2 foot. It can't stick out any higher than that.
Yeah. 1 foot
And our city
from-
engineer determines that.
1 foot from where? The average finished first floor, what, if it's,
The top of the basement.
you know, I think this is just setting us up for litigation too. Anyways, all right, you've answered my questions. I thank you very much.
You're welcome.
anything further? City Manager, did you?
Director Barrett, if you could join Director Maroney at the podium, just want to make sure that we're clear on this. It was my understanding that this is dealing, not exclusively, but almost exclusively with the first floor elevation as opposed to getting into the height restriction and everything else. And that creates, visually, that could break up the street wall. It's an aesthetic thing in a neighborhood. I could easily see how that could portray the neighborhood off kilter or whatever else. But that's the intent, is just that first level. So the basement, starting the basement, the top of the basement and the first floor, that those have to be within 2 feet of each other. It's a visual aesthetic requirement that, keeps a neighborhood intact, in line aesthetically. Is that close?
There's a very, good evening, Mayor and Council. That was a very good synopsis of what this ordinance change is doing. And as Director Maroney mentioned, that there is a 27-foot average height restriction on, for zoning requirements in residential districts. But what we don't have is a starting point where the finished floor is at. So what this establishes, finished floor for your starting point, because right now the finished floor elevation could be raised 6 feet from your neighbors, and now your house in this neighborhood is going to be 32 feet average above all the other houses instead of meeting our zoning requirement of 27 feet. And there's I think it was on Sherman, one of the new houses, it just proportionally did not fit in at all, and we had no means to try to regulate that.
Are you talking about the first floor, the door of the house? Are you talking
Yes.
about that floor elevation, or are you talking about the elevation of where the second floor starts, the ceiling?
No, this is strictly designating that the finished floor, which is where the front door goes in, has to meet the average of the adjoining homes within 2 feet.
And there's a term in this section B of 1712, in the case of unusual site topography, quote, unusual site topography, end quote. Is that, what's unusual site topography?
I think that was just an out for our city engineer to make a determination if there's some type of hardship on the site where they had some extreme grading problems or, and honestly, I believe it was probably some language that was typically incorporated from other communities.
So we know it, we see it, so it could be a matter of having rose bushes in the front yard or having tomato plants in the front yard. Mr. Radner remembers that type of issue. Again, I just don't
That
see
was all
this.
about the word suitable.
I just think it's, I don't want to pull lawyer, but I will pull it lawyer because I just started. I don't like the way it's written. I think it sets us up for potentially litigation, and I also think it's addressing a problem that's not a problem. But that's my opinion, and I appreciate your hard work and your answering my questions.
Do we want pictures of the offending properties?
Madam Mayor, you're not going to get consensus from me. I appreciate your desire to have unanimity
No,
in
it
our
doesn't
votes,
have-
but you're not going to convince me, okay?
Got it. Got it. Any other discussion? Are we ready to vote?
I have a
Yes.
question just about the
Mayor
language.
Pro Tem.
I guess this is more for our council. Is the language too ambiguous? Does it tell us what we need it to tell us? Because I've read it several times, and I have a little bit of a legal background, not quite like yours, but I am having a hard time understanding it.
Read clearly to me. I know that it is similar language that other communities have adopted, and as Director Barrett indicated, it was more of we recognized we could not control an existing situation and recognize there was a need for some kind of regulation. If you would like some offline discussion, I can do that with you to review the language, but it appears clear to me, and again, I don't have any concerns about a legal challenge for, again, the specific restrictions that this is trying to implement.
Using that language, is the term unusual site topography or issues defined anywhere? Do we know what that means?
It is not defined in our ordinance, and again, I think, again, the intent was so that the engineer has some ability to recognize that each particular parcel may have differing conditions that should be taken into account when, excuse me, implementing this 2 feet average requirement.
So then the city engineer it's up to the city engineer.
With respect to the particular parcel at issue,
Yeah.
and again, averaging the buildings that are on either side of the property that's at issue, I believe this ordinance gives him clear direction on what his ability to restrict that elevation is. That's my opinion. I think it is clear. If you like some additional language, we can take it and wordsmith it and discuss what additional language you feel is sufficient.
This is a first reading, right?
It is.
So,
Why is it that the city engineer has to determine anything? Unusual site topography or otherwise? If the ordinance is clear as to what can be done and what can't be done, why does the city engineer have to determine anything?
If you look, I can answer that. There's one particular house
Can't hear.
that's being, there's one particular house that was being constructed this summer, and elevation change between the parcel to the east and the west, there was probably an 8-foot difference in height because the whole parcel sloped. So in those types of instances, particularly those, is where you wouldn't be able to find an average that would maybe work for that house. So you need somebody that's in charge of taking a look at that specific site and its challenges to make a determination, and we felt the city engineer would be the best suited person for that job.
So then the way it's written, in such a situation where you've got that 8-foot drop, there's no law. There's no law about what can be done and what can't be done. It's up to the city engineer, depending on if he had his coffee that morning, or she had her coffee that morning. I mean, there's no direct law as to what is allowed and what's not.
If you think there's a better way
I
that we
just- I
can
just
word
don't
it
like-
and would like to propose it, I mean, we're open.
Am I just being too, all right, maybe I am.
Yes. City Manager Tungate, please.
Mayor Pro Tem, if I could add a 2 cents here. The reality of the situation is that the city engineer, or the building official, or Director Barrett, or anybody else, the planner, anybody in a situation like this particular situation, is going to have some amount of discretion. And, I was thinking, unusual topography. I guess in my mind, I was thinking, what if a house is next door to a house built on a slab versus a, enclosed basement? And maybe there's a difference in the, the elevations. But I do, as Director Barrett said, I do concur. I think it's a catch-all that speaks just directly to that discretion that we have to allot for in a situation like that.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
If there was a discrepancy where site plan was not approved and the builder felt like it was unfair, like as Mayor Pro Tem mentioned, that the city engineer hadn't had his coffee that morning or whatever, what would be the appeals process if they wanted to appeal that?
Well, it doesn't go to site plan approval for a new residence, only for commercial and industrial type properties. So I'll let Director Barrett answer
We
that
would
question.
recommend, if they had a grievance against our final decision, I think we would ultimately recommend they go to the zoning board of appeals and let them interpret our decision and grant a variance on the maximum height or where the finished floor is at. And there's also a building board of appeals commission that can be brought to too. So any of our challenges on any of our site plans are always have an appeal basis.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Mayor, I have another question.
Yes, Councilmember Rich.
There's a phrase in here that exempts certain homes from this restriction. The phrase, quote, "except in circumstances where the existing home was at the highest, lowest elevation on the street," end quote. Now, is that referring to the home being constructed or renovated, or is that referring to the home to the right or the left of it?
I think what they're saying is, well, maybe not.
Yeah,
try
that
to-
answers my question. This is a very ambiguously written ordinance, or proposed ordinance.
Oh, well,
So-
I think what they're saying here is if you have a highest and lowest and you're trying to take an average and they are the highest or the lowest, you can't really take the average on the street.
'Cause that's not how I read it. How I read that was that if I'm building and I'm at the highest, I'm totally exempt and I can go 6, 7, 10, 20 feet, whatever I want. That's how I read it.
Well, we're open to your wordsmithing, I'll tell you that. How's that?
Okay, can we, can it be approved with, don't approve it?
No. If you're not satisfied with this language, I would recommend not approving it.
So then putting it
Because
off
you
for
don't
the
want to
next.
approve language that's not going to be, you don't want to propose and approve language that you're not in agreement with.
Okay, so do we just,
You have a motion on the floor, so I suggest maybe call the vote and determine what occurs with this pending motion first, and then you can decide if it fails, what you want to do next.
Madam
you
Mayor,
have a
can I
vote.
say,
You
can I
have a
say one more
motion
thing, please? I'm not trying to be a stickler here on the words. I don't know if, I don't think that's what Ken is trying to do either. What I'm doing right now is ultimately what happens when statutes end up in courtrooms. You've got lawyers on both sides trying to pick apart the words and say what it means and what it doesn't mean, and then ultimately a judge gets to decide. That's why statutes have to be written as clearly and unambiguously as possible. And frankly, I just see too much ambiguity in here. So I don't plan on voting for this as written. It could be rewritten. I kind of like the idea of what's trying to be proposed, but the way it's written, I don't like it.
So we,
But I like you guys.
Who doesn't?
so then we vote pending motion.
Could you
So,
also, just point of order, could the motion be withdrawn and then another motion put in place? No?
or
We can make a motion to table it,
or
right?
table it, can't we table it for?
Well, but if you, Madam Mayor, if we table it,
Yeah.
then the exact same language comes back up.
Oh.
My suggestion, we could amend it. My suggestion is we
amending
vote
it.
on it. It sounds like there's a consensus to vote it down. Then it'll go back to the drawing board and come back. It seems to be the simplest solution. It seems to
Instead of
be.
amending it, is that what you
Yeah,
want?
yeah.
Do you have wording that you prefer?
Not offhand. I can't think of anything offhand.
Between the city attorney and staff, we can take another shot at it if it's defeated.
Oh, right. All right, so you want to vote on it and see if it,
Who knows, maybe it'll pass.
I'm ready to vote. I don't think this is going to be a unanimous vote, but let's,
no, it doesn't have to be a unanimous vote.
I don't know what's going to happen with this vote.
There's no way to just, to amend the, you're not ready to amend the wording.
Not offhand, I can't, I can't do it right now.
So if it's tabled, we could get an amendment? There's no rush.
Let's just vote on it.
Huh?
Let's just vote.
Call the vote. All right, we vote.
Mayor Pro Tem Radner,
I'm voting against it.
Councilmember Rich,
No, voting against.
Councilmember Weiss,
No.
Councilmember Burns,
Yes.
Mayor McClellan.
Yes. The motion fails, and so we will be looking at this with different wording at the next council meeting. Thank you. All right. Wow. Elevation of floors. Okay, item C, I don't know if this one is quite as controversial. First reading of an ordinance to amend sections 2-353 and 2-354 of Chapter 2, Article 3, Division 8 of the City of Oak Park Code of Ordinances. We need a motion to approve the first reading.
So moved?
Support.
Moved and supported. This is from the Arts and Cultural Diversity Commission, requesting 2 amendments to the Code of Ordinances. The first relates to the meeting time. It currently reads, "Commission shall meet once a month on the second Thursday of each month at 7 p.m." The commission is requesting the time be omitted so that they are flexible on the time. In lieu of a time specification, they would like to include the time of their meeting in their bylaws, which can be changed easily.
Without city council approval.
Correct.
So that's, I think that's the goal here.
Right.
I think this is
So-
an easy one.
Okay. Commission, they also would like, commission would like language pertaining to their mission statement in the Code of Ordinances to be amended to reflect their ability to partner with any of the Oak Park boards and commissions rather than just the Friends of the Library and the Recreation Commission. The city attorney has the amended languages, of the language in the attached document. So we have a motion? Yes.
Yeah, that's been seconded.
Discussion?
I think we're ready.
No, we're okay, ready to vote. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Rich.
Yes.
Councilmember Weiss.
Yes.
Councilmember Burns.
Yes.
Mayor McClellan.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Radner.
We're back to being unanimous, yes.
Yeah, we don't have to be unanimous, I'm just saying. So that motion carries. Which brings us to the city manager section and item 15A.
Assistant City Manager Kevin Yee, if you would join me at the podium for 15A, please.
Good evening again. Attached is a request from Expert Lawn and Snow LLC for a contract extension of the 2018 landscape maintenance contract M678. Expert has indicated they would like to execute the one-year contract extension of their unit prices for this project to perform the 2019, the first part said landscape, it was intended to be lawn. This is the 2019 lawn maintenance contract, M696. The contract allows for up to a 2-year extension. The project will mow and litter pick the lawns in the city's parks, grounds, and rights-of-way. It is recommended that City Council approve the offer for the contract extension from Expert Lawn and Snow Service, LLC, for the 2019 lawn maintenance contract M696 for a total amount of $108,596 be approved. Funding is available in the Major and Local Street Fund, Water and Sewer Fund, and Public Works budget.
Okay, motion to approve this request.
So moved.
Support.
Any discussion or questions?
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Is,
Councilmember Weiss.
would there be any benefit in putting this out to a bid? Is there a reason we're not doing that versus just renewing this contract?
It's an interesting question. We have tried for many years to get a good lawn maintenance contract in this city. And I think these guys have done a great job compared to many that we've had in the past. They have been much better than the ones we've had in the past. So I am very happy to recommend extending their contract. So we have bid it out over several years. The prices have fluctuated up and down. We think their price is fair and their work is good.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it. I got it.
Exactly.
Good enough. Ready to vote? Do we have a motion?
Yeah.
Yes, we do. Let's see, approve the contract extension. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Weiss.
Yes.
Councilmember Burns.
Yes.
Mayor McClellan.
Yes,
Mayor Pro Tem Radner.
Yes.
Councilmember Rich.
Yes.
motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. I'd like to have Director McLean join me at the podium for 15B, please.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, City Manager.
I'm sorry, Director Van Vleck.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, and congratulations.
Thank you.
Oh, congratulations.
It's still weird to hear. As you know, the city has been actively pursuing grants for the construction of the pocket parks planned for 9 Mile Road. The Community Foundation of Southeast Michigan, through the Ralph C. Wilson Fund, is offering grants up to $50,000 for projects that serve to increase the walkability and bikeability of local communities and/or increase outdoor recreational activities within the region. We believe that the Seneca Pocket Park assists the city in accomplishing these objectives and is therefore a worthy candidate for this grant. We are requesting a grant of $50,000 to assist in the creation of Seneca Pocket Parks. Specifically, the grant is being requested to fund a playscape that will hopefully be featured at the park. Funding for the pocket parks are available in the Major Street Fund and the Public Improvement Fund, as well as a grant that we've already received through the Oakland County Local Road Improvement Program grant. We are recommending the City Council approve a resolution in support of the city's application for the Community Foundation of Southeast Michigan Ralph C. Wilson Fund grant.
And is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported. I'd like to say to Mrs. Van Vleck that it's a beautifully written application.
Good job.
And very impressive project narrative, and I was ready to approve the grant, just reading that. Any questions? Yes.
Yeah, notwithstanding how beautifully written it is, I have a question. I understand that what the grant of $50,000 means. That means $50,000 coming from another fund other than the taxpayers. And I understand the $96,863, which has already been funded from another grant. But it says here, quote, "Funding is available for the Seneca Pocket Park in the Major Street Fund and the Public Improvement Fund," end quote. How much funding is available there? How much money are we talking about coming from the Major Street Fund and the Public Improvement Fund?
Wait, we're going to have to call in our consultant.
I apologize, I don't have an exact amount. I was not prepared for that question, but we have, as part of the funding for 9 Mile Road Diet, we also have in there the Pocket Park funding, which we've received one grant on it already, and
The funding from the
I'm sorry,
Major
funding for
Street
the road diet
Fund,
and
did
the
we already
pocket
approve it? Did this body already approve? When you refer to the funding in the Major Street Fund or the Public Improvement Fund, is that something that has already been approved by a vote
Yes,
of this body?
it has already been
I don't
approved.
have any further questions. Thank you.
Approved in the budget.
Okay, are we ready to vote then? Let's see. Approve a resolution. Support of the grant. Do we need a roll call or just a voice vote? Voice vote? What's that?
Just a grant application.
Grant application. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We are applying for the Southeast Michigan Ralph C. Wilson Fund grant, and I hope we get it.
Okay, 15C, Director Maroney's back.
Yes, so to piggyback off of the approval for the one grant application, it is also for the pocket parks that we are applying through the Michigan Council for Arts and Cultural Affairs to help cover the costs of the art that will be at that location. This is something that's already been budgeted, but as we promised council when we came for these projects, we would look for any grant opportunities to offset the costs of the residents. So this is another opportunity that we would be applying for, and we need your approval to do so.
So moved.
Support?
Moved and supported. Questions, discussion?
Yeah.
Ready to vote.
What's the art look like?
Yeah.
Has any-
I can't show you anything yet. I have to wait for the artist to do renderings and stuff.
Has,
It's your face
Just the
repeated
water
over and
tower all
over
over
again.
no, I'm just saying, has anybody?
The artist won't do a rendering until we actually hire him, but we need the grant to do that part, so.
And how much
So-
is it costing to get the rendering?
We didn't ask for a cost on the rendering. We didn't want to
Who is
expend
it?
money that was unnecessarily
And which
needed.
body of this city is going to be approving the rendering to become the art in the park?
City staff,
City staff or city council?
city staff.
City Council will need to approve the final art installation and as part of this grant. So city staff will make a recommendation, and then we will
Oh,
give it
okay.
to City Council
All
for
right.
their final
The-
I
approval.
stand corrected.
I see that the contract proposal is $24,000, the grant is $4,000. Where's the $20,000 coming from?
The same fund that is in the pocket parks that you asked about prior. It's already been budgeted for.
Yes.
May I speak to that? Keep in mind that, first of all staff members who have been submitting these grant applications, thank you.
Amen.
And others, because otherwise, this would be money that our taxpayers would have to foot out of their own pockets. So thank you for submitting these grant applications. These are dollars that have already been approved as part of our budget that we're living in right now. This would only, if we were to win these grants, these would only subsidize the project further. It's a win-win. There's no harm, no foul.
Are you subsidize it further by putting money back into the general fund or supplementing what's already been spent? Is it?
It's money that we otherwise would have to spend and has been approved to spend for these projects.
So if we get $4,000, $4,000 goes back into the general fund?
Well,
I think that will depend on where the bids come in, wouldn't you?
Well,
say?
these are not general fund items, first of all. These are special funds. So, no, it will not go back into the general fund, but it's possible, say possible, that we will not have to subsidize them as much from these special funds as we otherwise would have to. So again, thank you for submitting these grant applications, staff.
Just for the people who are newer to the council, in earlier days, 2011, we would submit grant applications and not get them. And now, with this phenomenal staff, when we submit grant applications, we are getting them. And this is going to improve the quality of life of all of us. So we are thrilled beyond words. Are we ready to vote?
Yes.
Yes. All those in favor of approving this grant submission?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carried.
Okay, on to the exciting stuff here with our Finance Director, Sandra Crawford. 15D, please.
Oh, holler. And make sure you're on.
Sorry, I was not on. Start again. Good evening, Mayor, Council, City Manager Tungate. Please excuse me, I am a little bit under the weather. Before you for item 15D is the first quarter 2018-19 investment report. And just to summarize, the first quarter investment report is showing the total citywide cash and investments of $30,252,779. And it includes cash in the operating account of $3,374,692, which excludes outstanding checks or other adjustments. Short-term investments in the Oakland County pool investment is $9,586,561, and we have long-term investments totaling $17,291,526. And the city has maximized investments returns on short-term cash by utilizing the Oakland County investment pool and minimizing the amount maintained in the checking account for the little interest that's earned on the daily depository accounts. Interest for the months of July through September 2018 totaled $97,591. So overall, the first quarter was great. I will be coming before you next, the second council meeting in February to bring the second quarter investment reports, which will go from October to December. Is there any questions?
Just to interrupt, remembering back 2011, I think the interest income for the whole year was $30,000, and this is $97,000 for one quarter.
Absolutely. It's doing pretty good.
Thank you. So we need to accept this report?
Yes, absolutely.
Is there a motion to accept this
Support?
first quarter investment report? Moved and supported. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried.
Okay, Director Crawford, 15E as well, please.
Yes. Item 15E is the second quarter budget to actual report for the current fiscal year that we're in, which is 2018-19. And the purpose of this is to highlight the fiscal year-to-date revenues and expenditures through the second quarter, which ended December 31st, 2018. Through the second quarter, general revenues and expenditures should represent about 50% of the annual budget. The following summary does not include the significant budget amendments that are presented for approval, which is item 15F. So this is where we stand without the proposed budget amendments that I'm going to submit to you right after I read this. Basically, the total revenues throughout the second quarter were approximately $15.4 million, and it represents about 72% of the annual budget. And the revenues are on track. Again, because the nature of our revenues are pretty much property tax, and a lot of people, which we love, pay on time, we get a lot of our revenue right off the front end. And so that is primarily the reason why the revenues for the city are at about 72% as opposed to the 50% if you went in line with the second quarter of the budget. And that's just basically breaking down 25% for each quarter. For the expenditures, we're approximately close to 50%. Again, a lot of time with the expenditures due to the nature of the departments and things that are happening in the cyclical nature of the city's events, the total for the second quarter were approximately $10.1 million. And again, that was about 49% of the budget. There were a few departments that were exceeded the 50%. I've outlined them on there, but as you can see, the common thread in most of those departments are the defined benefit pension contributions. And so overall, in a nutshell, once we make you approve the budget amendments, we will fix the budget to actuals inconsistencies as far as not being on target. But overall, the general fund operations are in line with the budget. We are projecting the fund balance is still at our target level of 19%, which is awesome. And the annual budget with the amendments that I'm approving is presenting is going to show a balanced budget And it just kind of goes to show, though, our continual long-term legacy costs that we have for the retirement fund and the other post-employee benefits, the retirees' health care, that is not a problem that's not for any city that in the state of Michigan. It's a problem that all of us are dealing with, and so we're being fiscally responsible in handling that. Is there any questions that anybody have on the budget?
City
the
Manager
actual-
Tungate would like to add.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to piggyback just briefly on what Director Crawford just mentioned, a couple of key things I wanted to point out, one of which I would be remiss if I didn't point out something she just said on the bottom of page 2 regarding our projected fund balance against expenditures of 19%. Very, very proud of our staff and our team for getting us there. That is a very, very good sign of where we're going. Number 2, as Director Crawford mentioned, just to reiterate, we are planning to make our additional pension contributions, getting us on a 20-year amortization schedule and a trajectory to, hopefully fully fund our pension systems. Healthcare is a different story, but our pension systems, for the first time, we can say, at least the first time in a long time, we can say we're getting out in front of, which is great. And we have been managing the city's budget well enough to be able to afford the opportunity to do that because it was a pretty substantial, almost $1 million increase in contributions. The other thing is that, unrelated, but we did charge on the winter tax bill, we did go, per council's permission, we did go and add the Public Act 345 up to the 7 mills onto the winter tax bill, thereby getting the whole 7 mills that we didn't get in the summer tax bill. We will get it in the winter tax bill, so it'll be a little bit higher. I think it's interesting to see that permit revenue, the court seems to be on track. Permit revenue is a little higher than expected, showing that we are having somewhat of a building boom in the city. And then, of course, with our interest income and interest revenue on higher than, otherwise would have received returns on our investments, that is also playing a role in helping us subsidize some of our other functions throughout the city. But in essence, the report is on track. The city's expenditures are on track and on par with what we expected. That's it.
So residents should expect a little higher winter tax bill?
Yes.
Yes, the winter tax bill may have been, it's less than $500,000, but it was money that was not charged in the summer tax bill that made up the difference to get to the 7 mills on the winter tax bill.
So it's slightly bigger.
It would have been, yeah.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you for bringing us good news.
Good.
We need a, let's see, second quarter. Now, we're just accepting this.
No, not for D, but for F, they do.
Oh, approve, okay.
So go to F.
For F. If, I don't,
Oh, so you do.
We need a motion to accept
Right, there's the
this second quarter budget.
So moved. Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, item F.
Item 15F. The city's annual budget was adopted May 16th, 2018, and it was effective July 1st of 2018. And the budget is adopted at the department level, and it's in accordance with the State Budget Act. Budget amendments are to be completed throughout the fiscal year in order to reflect the most current information available related to revenue and expenditures budgets. Budget amendments that have a positive or negative impact on fund balance or change in the department total require council's approval. And so the proposed amendments are based on the actual and projected activity to date. And so the first quarter budget amendments are attached and it's summarized. And we started out the fiscal year, this fiscal year, with the audited beginning fund balance being $3,894,814. And the amendment that we're proposing is to amend the $608,194, to which, when we adopted the budget in May, we indicated that we were going to have a surplus or to add to the general fund balance of $608,194. With the increase in the OPEB obligation by us, when we prepared the corrective action plan and submitted to the state, that we were going to change our amortization summary, going from a 25-year amortization to a 20-year, and then changing the rate of return from an 8% to a 7%, caused us to increase the amount of contributions that the city needs to make. And so not only we're not going to add to that, but we had indicated that we would need to balance our budget, bring transfers in from the Retiree Health Care Fund and from the Public Improvement Fund, and we don't need to do that. So it's great news, and what I'm saying is that we don't need to do these additional transfers into the general fund, and we still, without even bringing those transfers in, are able to meet the additional obligation that we have to make. And so we still, at this point, come out in a win-win situation, meaning that we project to end with the same fund balance that we did when we started. And we pretty much kind of touched on that when we talked at December with the state of the finances, that we talked about how we were able to do that additional contribution to the OPEB, and that if we continued in the same vein that we operated in last year, that we would be able to meet these additional funding requirements for the defined benefit plan. And so throughout the budget amendment attachment, if you look for each fund, you see over and over and over again, adjust to the actuary required contribution for the fiscal year 2019. And so that was the primary driving force of what we had to do. But I'm just pleased to report that we don't have to make those transfers in. We are still able to make the increased obligation and still come with our target of 19% of fund balance. So it's very good news.
City Manager Tungate.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just one thing I wanted to add, piggyback again here. The one thing that Sandra didn't mention, and I just saw the revised healthcare cost numbers just last week from our consultants. And in some of these, in one case, for example, you'll see health insurance being reduced. Our healthcare costs for both retirees and active employees are falling off a cliff, and that's a good thing. And they're falling off a cliff because of the wellness programs that we have. We also have a fitness challenge going on at City Hall among all of our employees right now, and many other things. But even with the retirees, with some of the changes we were unfortunately had to make, that is the area where we have really, really saved money. And I think you're going to see that when the new budget process comes up, just like you are here with these amendments. But it also speaks volumes to the effort that our staff has put in place in terms of finding these dollars and not adding additional costs. We're able to save on both ends of it. So thank you for that. It's fantastic news.
Absolutely.
That's a first, healthcare costs going down.
Yeah.
That is, I think, first in 7.5 years.
Yeah, it's been a miraculous turnaround. We also, just one more thing, we also have a smoking cessation program we are just about to fully implement, which citywide, which, you know, that will change healthcare costs as well. But it's those little things that have all added up, and there's no question about it. The numbers are now showing the savings.
So this is that clinic that we opened also.
Yes.
Okay. So we need a motion to approve the resolution to authorize the budget amendment number 2019-1.
So moved?
Support.
Moved and supported. Discussion? No? Roll call, please.
Councilmember Burns.
Yes.
Mayor McClellan.
Yes?
Mayor Pro Tem Radner.
Yes.
Councilmember Rich.
Yes.
Councilmember Weiss.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you.
I just wanted to, Madam Mayor, members of council, if I could, I just wanted to thank our public safety and especially our Department of Public Works staff. I know, unfortunately, we had to call a snow emergency last weekend, and these are the men and women who dug us out. So thank you very much for your hard work. And we had a water main break or two in the process that they were dealing with as well. So thank you very much, all of you. That completes the city manager report for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, City Manager Tungate. Next, we go to call to the audience. please give us your name and address and limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Ed Bass, 24250 Cape Lane, Oak Park. What happened to the new progress?
Ah, thank you. As far as I know, that is on track. These things always take way longer than you expect, but they've got a lot of money invested in this project, and they still need to sign the final documents and then start work. So we've got all our fingers and toes crossed and can't wait. Anybody else? Okay. All right. Mayor Pro Tem Radner.
I saw something in this past week which really warmed my heart about our city, and it was that there is a particular person who lives in the city who's a federal employee. His job includes keeping us all safe, and because of the craziness that's taking place in Washington, D.C. right now, he's been forced to continue to work without a paycheck. And Cheryl Weiss and everybody at the on this Facebook group, Oak Park Neighbors, had a something or another, I don't know what it's called, but it was something that was set up on Facebook to assist this family. And it was really heartwarming to see everybody coming together as a community and trying to help together. It warmed my heart, and a special thank you to everybody who participated, and especially to Cheryl Weiss. So thank you, and with that, have a good night.
And City Manager Tungate just mentioned that if there are any federal employees in the city besides this one family, if they're having trouble with taxes or anything, to please call his office, and he will make arrangements for them. Because obviously this is out of their control. Councilmember Burns.
Thank you, everyone, for coming out. Please dress accordingly with the weather. It's really cold. We're supposed to get more snow. And I want to say also that we have some really good kids in Oak Park. I was out shoveling my snow on Sunday, and 2 young men stopped and they helped dig out my driveway in the front of my house. I was so happy to see them. And I kept telling them, I'm so sorry, I don't have any cash or anything to give you. And they said, that's okay, we'll help you anyway. And they stayed and they cleared out my driveway and my walkway. So thank you, and be kind to our youth.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Councilmember Weiss.
Good evening. I just wanted to thank all of the Oak Park residents who came out on Martin Luther King Day yesterday to participate in the Southfield Peace Walk. We had representatives from the Arts and Cultural Diversity Commission, as well as other residents who came out to represent the city of Oak Park in that walk.
What was the temperature again?
It was very cold.
Yeah.
We had hand warmers. Special thanks to Benny, who's in our booth right now, who came out and filmed it without hand warmers. Appreciate him. And we survived, and it was all right.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there's the evidence. Some of us were more prepared than others. Also, I just wanted to remind everyone that Winterfest is coming up next Sunday, January 27th, from 1 to 4 p.m. at the community center. There's also going to be ice skating at the ice arena, stuff happening outside in the grounds, s'more making. We're actually going to have kosher s'mores this year,
Wow.
Which is a first of anywhere I've heard in any other city doing that. I don't know if other cities have done it. I've not heard of it, but we will have kosher s'mores. And several other activities for the entire family, so encourage everyone to come out for that. Daddy-daughter dance is also fast approaching. It'll be on Sunday, February 10th from 5 to 7 p.m. And advance registration is required. So if you want to go to that, register by February 6th. It's $25 per couple, and you register with the Recreation Department. Finally, the library, there's lots of activity happening in the library. One thing I just wanted to highlight is the Adult Battle of the Books, which is coming up on Saturday, February 2nd at 1 p.m. at the Oak Park Library, which is in conjunction with a few other neighboring libraries. This is for adults to read children's books and then come answer trivia questions for prizes. So everything about that sounds wonderful. So if you're interested in that, check out the library page, Facebook page, or you can talk to our library director or come into the library. And I see some people who might be interested in starting a team in the back there. Thank you and have a good night.
Thank you. Councilmember Rich.
Thank you all for coming. Have a good night.
Great. I represented the city at Oak Park High School yesterday, celebrating Martin Luther King Jr. Keeper of the Promise celebration. It was beautifully sung and danced and played. Heartwarming tribute to someone who we all need right now. So it was very inspiring. I'd like to thank you all for coming. Stay warm, don't slip, and we'll see you next time. Meeting is adjourned.